Hello everyone and welcome again to English with Joseph. Well, today we're going to talk about public transport. Yes, that's correct. Today we will talk about public transport. What's cheap and what isn't, and what the best way is to get around the UK. Well, first of all, when you arrive at any of Britain's airports, you will realise that it costs a lot of money to get into the centre of the city that you are visiting, especially around London. Stansted Airport is south of London, very far south of London. In fact, it's nowhere near London. In Stansted Airport, you can expect to pay somewhere around £30 per person in order to get to the centre of London, and that's just one way. Our trains have a very strange habit of charging the same amount one way as a return. So, for example, you can pay £30 single fare to go into London, and you can also pay £31 for a return. So you have to be very careful, and the buses aren't much better. So, Stansted Airport. Imagine you're flying from somewhere into Stansted Airport. You can expect to pay £30 on the train. If you're flying with Ryanair or if you book in advance, you can get a slight discount if you buy your tickets on the plane or if you book it on the website in advance. There's all kinds of problems with that though. If you book your ticket in advance, you have to collect it from a machine which may want the credit card you've booked it with, which may not be available, especially if someone else bought it for you. If you're going into Heathrow, into central London, there is a connection on the metro system, but that also is very expensive. One journey on the metro system between two zones only can cost you somewhere between £4 and £7. The buses are probably the cheapest way to travel. If you're in the city of London, you can buy one-day passes for the metro and the buses, but still a little bit expensive. But in order to go from the airport in to the city centre, definitely the bus would be your cheapest option. From Stansted Airport or from Gatwick Airport, there is a low-cost bus company where you can pay as little as €10, maybe a little bit less even, to get into central London. This is very good if you're on a budget, whereas a train will cost you around 3 times as much as that. I can't remember the name of the bus company, but it's very famous, and there's adverts for it everywhere. Yes, I remember now. It's called TerraVision. TerraVision. TerraVision, you can go from Stansted and Gatwick into central London very, very cheaply from Victoria, Liverpool Street Station, and I think they have a few stops along the way as well. You also have the choice of using National Express coaches, which probably is a little bit more expensive, but is certainly more comfortable. On National Express buses, you have Wi-Fi and you're guaranteed a seat, whereas on the buses to central London with TerraVision, you're not guaranteed either. You would really have to stand. Trains certainly are not the best way to travel around the UK or even into central London. Let me tell you a bit about the history of our train companies so you understand why. In the 1950s and 60s, train, plane and bus companies were all operated by the governments. They were all government-owned companies, and they were not accountable to anyone for anything. They swallowed money, and they gave very little in return, and something they were not very good at was customer service. Perhaps this is also true of Spain today. For those of you who know me, you'll know I live in Barcelona, and here the public transport is all about unions and working no more than you have to, and definitely being rude and unpleasant to tourists really helps. We were like that in Britain too, but then Margaret Thatcher came along and she privatised everything. By privatising the train company suddenly realised that it had to operate a good service in order to make money. It wasn't very good at doing that, and at different times it's almost gone bankrupt. Even today, the train company doesn't really know how to survive in the private sector. So, the government is trying to help it. What happened was, when they privatised it, they divided up the area of the UK into different train regions, and the highest bidder, the highest amount of money given, bought you your way into the train service. So, for example, the south of England is all operated by a company called First Great Western. If they don't perform well, the government will take away their contracts and will give it to someone else. The government stays in control of the train service. In fact, the government owns the tracks and it rents out the trains and the stations to the private companies. It has to do this because when it first privatised the railway, things didn't quite go very well, because the railway companies just didn't know how to act, and they didn't know how to react to problems. When you have a company which is not accountable and is just given money every moment, suddenly that company has to be accountable, and that company has to give a good service to get money. Well, you can imagine the confusion that costs, especially when the employees' minds don't change and they still have the mindset that they're working for the government. Things have changed a lot, but in order to deal with this situation, fares are very, very high, because the train companies know that they really can't afford to run on a good budget for people, and also the government knows that it also has to make a profit from the train companies. Many people in many areas depend on trains where there's no buses, and many of the companies have also arranged deals with the government to ensure that buses cannot operate in certain areas. So it's all very political and all very complicated. So buses, private bus companies away from the government, are able to offer a much better deal. So that's definitely the way to travel if you're coming to the UK. The good thing about the UK is there are private companies which have always been private, but the ones which were public and became private never really learned how to deal with customers, customer service, and they really didn't learn how to make money or how to deal with budgets. So, let me just recap. On a train from Stansted Airport into central London will cost you anywhere between 30 and 50 euros. A bus going on the same journey will cost you around 10 euros. A luxury bus, National Express, will cost you between 20 and 30 euros. But it's worth it, and it's a much better service, and you're guaranteed a seat if you have some extra money. Gatwick Airport is the same. You have the choice of the train company. You also have the choice of the government bus company. You also have the choice of National Express, which was a government bus company and now privatised, or the cheap company, which is TerraVision, same as Stansted Airport as well. Okay, so imagine you're travelling into Heathrow Airport. I don't think you have TerraVision there, but you do have other things, like, for example, National Express. Oh, that's my window closed. You do also have other opportunities such as the metro, and that doesn't always go as planned because there's sometimes delays. Other airports around the country are cheaper, but if you're trying to get into London, it's very, very expensive. Well, I hope that helps, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you, and goodbye.